Hello, YouTube. I wanted to do this video because, one of the main criticisms I think a lot of people will have about what I'm going to do is I can't live off grid because I have children. And honestly, that's some bullshit. Like, with the way the schools are headed and shit, who cares about school? Homeschool them. That's gonna suck, but I'm sure there's plenty of online schools and shit that are forming too, private universities. That's what I would look for. I would, put my brain to work on how to fucking do school in the woods. And when it comes to everything else, like social circles, that'll be hard. Maybe have community for that. We could talk about that, do this with like minded people or whatever if you're going to do it with kids. That way they can have their own little, school basically, even like fucking have, two different groups of them have sports teams or whatever, even if you want to. That's what I would do. And then as for the children themselves, if you think, oh, kids won't like this, have you met a kid? Every kid I've ever met pretty much wants to do something like this on some level. And if you make it, comfortable, I think they'll be fine. And if they aren't digging it or whatever, or hate, not being in the city and whatever, like I would try leaving them on an overnighter someplace with nothing and see how they like that, and then see how they like where they are, and then maybe go send them to live with an uncle or something in the city for a couple of days in his apartment. See how they like that, and then talk to the kid. But I'm a very practical person like that, and generally I think the kids that I would have around me probably aren't going to need that lesson because kids are smart. If you show them all three of those, they'll get that what they have is pretty damn good. Especially the way I would build everything. Like, I'm hoping to have enough land to let my nephew Jackson build his own cabin. Uh, Maybe have it connected into my stuff with a walkway if he wants or not. The walkways that I'm mostly doing for my cat. I want the whole place to be accessible to my cat. I want him to have a big range of freedom and whatever. And he doesn't have claws because he came that way. So he's kind of stuck inside. But like, I'm gonna make it like a fucking cat palace basically. And I like it better anyway because I don't want to fucking go out in the weather and bugs and shit in between going to the bathroom and the fucking house. And I don't think most people do. And I think a lot of people might have an indoor cat or want an indoor cat. And that's the other thing is like, I want a nice, clean, cuddly cat to snuggle with. And I'm cool with taking him outside and whatever every once in a while. We do that. But in reality, a cat roaming around all the time outside can have fleas and diseases and all sorts of shit. Like, I want my little buddy to live longer, I guess. And it's kind of the same thing with the kids. Like, I'm making a spot for the cat and I'm building around him. You make a spot for the children and you build around them too. Like, if I had children right now that I was going to be taking care of, the bunkhouse that I'm building as a guest cabin would just be for the kids. And what I'm building for the bunkhouse is like two 10 by 10 rooms with a hallway and like a bigger living room. And the 10 by 10 rooms are going to have like, I think I'm going to put like a full size bed or a twin bed, or like a real one, and then build some sort of double twin bunk bed. I'll see how big the room is and how much we can fit in there, whatever. And the sizes of the cabin and the room will change depending on how well the beds fit in when I draw it all out in measurements and shit. But and that's kind of how I'm working at all of this. I'm coming up with a plan, and I'm gonna start drawing it as I need shit actually in, like blueprint form or whatever. And I'm good at working on the fly. And if you're not like that, you might want to plan better. Uh, the other part of this is building skills and stuff for this. My grandfather's father was a pattern maker. I don't know if you know what that is or not, but basically they're a really, really good carpenter that makes the thing that makes a mold. And he worked in the bell casting industry. He worked in the ordnance industry in World War II. He invented the Ramsey winch. Those of you who are into off-roading and vehicles and shit, that's his invention. He was the mind behind it. Ramsey was the money behind it. And I don't know, I got distracted. Uh, I got distracted by the Ramsey winch thing. We were talking about off-grid shit. I just completely fucking went down a rabbit hole. I might scrap this video. But what was my point with the Ramsey winch thing? Anyway, I'm a creative person. I remember where I was going. Carpentry skills. He taught my grandfather carpentry, and he was a master carpenter. I have a clock he made that I'll do a video on. And my grandfather taught me, and we built all sorts of stuff when I was a kid. We built rabbit traps and a trebuchet and boxes and garden boxes and little projects around the house and stuff that just needed doing, basic carpentry tricks and stuff. And just, I know a lot about that kind of stuff from doing that. And then in high school, I basically slept through geometry class and got a 99. And the combination makes me really handy at building shit. And I'm hoping to show you guys some really cool, cheap ways to do a lot of things. And what I'm going to focus on is not so much on how you're supposed to do something, but how can you do something for cheap that is effective, that will last forever. And I think that's a cool way to do shit. And I think children would love to live in such a home. Like, especially with air conditioning and heat and a cat and hallways that, are screened in porch. Like, this is a pretty cushy place. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't hesitate to have a kid or children there. And with Starlink, you can get some sort of internet school going, like I said. And the other thing with children that I would definitely worry about, if you have a bunch of kids, like, you adopt 30 children or whatever and train them all to use SKSs and start your own empire. Not that I've thought about that. If that's your situation, well, then you don't have to worry about social interaction. They'll like go handle their own shit. But like, that's not most people's family. Most people have one or two kids, and they're going to want to be around other kids and shit. So some of like small town communities you could move into, like maybe you could find a small town with a school that has a bus that would pick them up. That's definitely a thing. There's a whole bunch of these like rural schools that are pretty good. I say pretty good. They probably suck. I'm a snob when it comes to schools. I would definitely go the private route, and I would pick my land based on its closeness to the academy that I was wanting to send my child to. I think some education things are important, and I think most of those happen in lower education and high school. I think college is mostly fucking useless. I think college professors are idiots. And I think most of what they teach, you'd be better off reading it out of a book and going and trying to apply it. Like, I think we should really completely redo the way we do upper education, or really education with children in general. The other route I might go with my kids would be just let them run free in the woods and fucking teach them what I want to teach them. And that's a completely legit way to go, too. You can probably get away with that. The Amish do. I think they have to have some sort of academic shit, but you'd want that. You want your kids to be able to read and do math and whatever, right? But like, there's a bunch of shit they're teaching now that like you can just leave that shit the fuck out. Like when it comes to science, I would teach a kid as much science as they were interested in learning. If they're not interested in it, I wouldn't focus on it at all because it's never going to be a part of their life. Now, if you have a kid that's like, how do volcanoes work? Maybe, we get a geology textbook and we talk about that a lot. I would tailor my education to the child's interests and I would make them an expert in their field without a degree and then teach them how to use that to make money. And that's what I would encourage you to do. You can do a lot of different things to make money if you're smart. And like some education and a degree would help, like a business degree or something, or depending on what you want to do. If you want to be a doctor, a business degree isn't going to help you, but that's a conversation for a different day. Children and off grid, the cool part is with land and whatever, you can build a playground for your kids easy and have a bunch of dogs and cats, and kids like animals. And as far as gardening and shit, like I'm kind of planning on being light on the garden. I'm gonna have a greenhouse. I'm gonna have it full of veggies and pot, and that's just for my own use mostly. Like if someone wants some and they're visiting, then they can have some tomatoes or whatever. But like I'm not gonna be growing shit for other people. And the blacksmith shop, every kid I've ever fucking shown any of that shit to, they were just fucking instantly interested because no one else they've ever met can do that shit. And like some of the stuff that I can do in a garage with limited tools is akin to magic to some people because they were traditionally educated in blacksmithing or knife making or whatever. And this is the advantage that you have when you just read some fucking books and go and apply it. You end up finding out what's actually possible and what actually works and what doesn't. And there's a whole bunch of bullshit that they teach that like I wouldn't worry about. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that like, is there another way to do it that involves some expensive shit? Yeah, there is, but there's also a $5 way to do it in a garage. And I'm much, much more interested in blacksmithing that costs $5 in a garage than I am that costs $25,000 in a shop in downtown, wherever. And I think that's, every person who is into blacksmithing is that way. And I think it's like in our DNA to like that shit. So I think kids would like all of the off-grid living shit. Especially like when I say blacksmithing, I guess what I'm talking about is a metal wood shop that can build anything, because that's what I'm going to make. I don't really consider myself a blacksmith so much as I am like I'm a maker of things. I can make anything, and I usually turn my attention to weapons. And weapons tend to be made out of wood and steel, so I'm pretty good at making things out of wood and steel. And as a result, my house is pretty much going to be made out of wood and steel. And the other advantage of making a house out of wood and steel is it's going to last a really long fucking time. And I don't know. I think with the room that you'll have in the country, just to let your kids do whatever they want to do, give them a little bit of money to build a room to do it in, and then just let them go. I mean, they could paint, they could play music, they could whatever. And this is the thing is you don't have to like just sit around and play video games and fucking be depressed about life if you don't have money. None of us are going to have money. They've already made sure of that. So it's, how do you want to live without money? Do you want to live without money in an apartment as a slave at some fucking horrible place? Or would you rather live as a free man on your own land, building your own shit as you have the money and forging your own life in the wilderness? And to me, that seems way more appealing. And I think the best thing that you could do for your children is to show them how to live. And living in an apartment isn't really living, especially as this gets worse and worse. You know, you start hearing gunshots every night and shit. Like, that's not just apartment living, that's city living in general. You know, I talk shit about apartments a lot, but like, when I talk shit about apartments, I'm talking shit about cities. Apartments are just like the worst example of that because you are living the closest to people. I want to live farther away from people. I think most people are that way. And like for my buddy and I don't know how far apart our cabins are going to be, but I'm buying a set of field telephones for a reason. I'm guessing we're not going to be within earshot of each other for us to be. Probably have his farm in between him and I with a phone line ran down the middle of it on some poles or something. Have, you know, phone power, water, whatever else needs to go on that. But and half of that's because I at least expect at first I want to build a water tower and fill it with like rain catchment or something like that to get us by until we drill a well. And I think once I do that, there's no reason not to run two lines off of that. And if we're already running a phone line, we'll just run it with that. And then it one of us gets Starlink, we'll run an internet cord to the other one till the other one gets Starlink, and then probably run a cord the other way. That way we have backup shit. Because like I think that would be a smart idea. Get two Starlinks, one at each property, and have, you know, backup lines running for them to the other one. So that way, if something happens to your shit, you know, you still can have internet and whatever. And like it's common sense shit like that I'd like to do. And the stuff I wouldn't like to do is like build the same house or whatever. Like I was talking about, I think we should build one of our guest houses that's made to hold multiple people before we build our cabins, because that way we could, you know, have everything set up and share a cabin for a little bit while we build a second building. And like the next building we could work on would be either his cabin or my cabin. And either way, then we'd have two buildings. But the other way to go would be to go and just throw up two cheap cabins, small, and plan them as a future use building, as a I don't know, as a guest cabin for one person, something you could do an Airbnb with. This is another way that I'd like to make money with my property once I get it. Is 2 acres won't work for this, but like I figure what I'm gonna do is buy 2 acres that's gonna be there, and then I'm gonna keep buying patches of woods as I have money and that are, you know, nearby, and then we'll use the shop and whatever to pre-cut shit to go and build cabins, or take tools with us up there and go build cabins, and put a little solar thing in there just so they have you know, a place to charge a phone and a TV or something like that, and have a wood stove in there and have the ultimate off-grid experience, because you can get a little solar generator thing now from Energizer for $140. Find that on Amazon. That's pretty decent. It would run, I think, a TV, especially an LED one, with an Amazon Fire Stick, and it would charge your phone. And that's all I would need in one of those cottages. And I would like to start building those and build, you know, cool places to spend a night and throw them up on Airbnb. I think that's really a way to make money. Like, it depends on where you're going to do this, but if you make it a cool place and make it pretty cheap out in the middle of nowhere, you'll attract people, just people passing through, if nothing else. And you can advertise it and stuff. Uh, I don't think I have anything else to say about living off grid with children, and we've kind of wandered through a dozen topics, but this is all good shit for anyone interested in this topic. Um, if you really want to hear about living off grid with some kids, in the podcast with Joe Rogan with Raghunath Capo or something like that. Uh, Let me find that so I know I'm saying that right. Nath Capo. Yeah, Raghunath Capo. It's episode 1430. He's kind of a yogi kind of guy that did music and shit. I forget what band he's in. He's famous from being in the band, but I don't know him from the band. Uh, I liked his shit when he was talking about his kids because he like sends them to some sort of like off-grid school where they learn primitive living skills. And you could totally send them to something like that. You could totally do that for your kids. It'd be good for you to have those skills anyway. And the best way to learn those skills is to teach them, believe it or not. That's anything. Anything you really want to learn, if you think you can do it, start trying to teach it. And if you can teach it, you know, you will learn more teaching it than you ever learned before you started teaching it. Because it's like having a mastery of a subject. And that's why, like, professors uh, have their positions is usually because they've just taught a subject a lot. So they really know a subject. And you could do that with all of the skills that are important in life with your kids and then help them do that with their kids. And like, I think that's what's best in life. I'll see you guys later.